Oklahoma's offense versus what is a really good Texas defense coming up next here on Locked On Crossover with Locked On Longhorns and Locked On Sooners.
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Once again, thanks for making Locked On your first listen every single day, whether it's Locked On Longhorns, Locked On Sooners, or any of the great shows we've got across the Locked On network. We are your team every day. So, Brad, let's talk the Texas defense because it's a good unit. It's still a really good unit, a lot of really talented players. Yes, you went up against an Ohio State team that has a good offense, a Florida team that DJ Lagway rediscovered himself a little bit. He found out and realized, oh yeah, I'm pretty good at this thing. So what's up with Texas's defense? Where do you think that they're really being successful right now?
Well, to answer that, John, let me start off by saying it's Thursday, October 9th, 2025, and OU still sucks. All right, to your actual answer. That was the most surprising part of Texas's loss to Florida, right? Like, there was a scenario where I saw Texas losing that game. I didn't pick Texas to lose that game, so I'm not going to pat myself on the back too much. But if Texas was going to lose, I thought it would be 13-10, 17-14. Maybe Florida would have a defensive touchdown or a special teams touchdown. Like, the Texas defense had been playing at such a high level. And even in that week 1 game at Ohio State, they did more than enough for the Longhorns to win. They just got no help from the offense. The Texas defense just laid a total egg on Saturday against a Florida offense, which had been, bottom 2 or 3 in the SEC in pretty much every statistical category going into that game. So I still think this Texas defense is elite. I think they're one of the best in the country. I expect them to bounce back. But it was, if it's anything like what we just saw in the swamp, then this Oklahoma offense may be able to move the ball and score consistently. But Texas has a ton of star power. I mean, preseason All-Americans at every level with Colin Simmons up front, Anthony Hood linebacker, Michael Taff at defensive back. None of them played like that last weekend. But it's a talented group. It's the same defensive coordinator who's been there for 5 years. More often than not, they know what they're supposed to do. They're good at tackling. There aren't a lot of coverage breakdowns. So we'll see. A big key in this game is whether or not Manny Muhammad can play. Manny Muhammad is Texas's number 1 cornerback, and he missed the Florida game. And you said it, John, like DJ Lagway was a coming out party for him. He looked incredible, and Texas just couldn't cover anybody, and they lost a lot of one-on-ones on the outside. So this isn't last year's Oklahoma. Like, you guys actually have real wide receivers playing football going into this game. So if Muhammad's out, can the other Texas guys play well enough in his stead to hold up for the Longhorn secondary? So long-winded answer. This Texas defense, I think, is very good. But again, they're coming off of their worst performance, I would argue, since 2022. So did Florida expose something and give Oklahoma a few things on tape to work on? Or can you just chalk it up as a really bad day for Texas?
Yeah, Jay, it seems like these two offenses are kind of in a little bit of a similar boat right now. The offensive line for Oklahoma has been up and down. Pretty good in pass pro for the most part, except for that Kent State game. Haven't really been able to run the ball consistently. What's your take on where Oklahoma's offense is right now heading into the Red River Showdown?
Biggest problem for Oklahoma is going to be that run game. Plus, at the same time, we don't know who's going to be throwing the ball. Like, I think Michael Hawkins can do enough to make sure the game stays competitive on the offensive side. He has his legs. He's got the ability to pass. Again, DJ Lagway had a coming out party, and with Muhammad potentially being, from going from probable to questionable to game time decision last week, I'm curious to see how healthy he'll be. But I mean, as somebody you can kind of pick on. Same thing with Kobe Black. I love Kobe Black. I thought he was a really good prospect. We were looking at him. You're dealing with two guys that are dealing with some dinged up situations. I think Oklahoma has a chance to try to take advantage of that. The wide receivers are healthy this year so far, knock on wood. We've got guys that are able to go out. Plus, we're getting back one of our better wide receivers from the springtime in Giovanni Gibson. He had his first set of snaps against Kent State. So the receiving side, I think, will be fine. Plus, we've been a really good pass block team. Like, Michigan couldn't even really get home the way they wanted to against Oklahoma. So that's something that's kind of a big deal in my personal opinion, that we're able to protect whoever the quarterback is. The run game's the question. And this is where things get interesting. The plot thickens in this one, mainly because going into this game, Florida was ranked 13th in the SEC in rushing. They were not very good. Everybody played against, they were struggling all season long. Number 12, Oklahoma. So the big thing that I've seen about Texas is, and I said this, and Texas fans ain't gonna like me hearing this either, is the two things I said I was worried about with Texas was not only the offensive line being young and having new dudes, but y'all brought in 5 transfers on the interior defensive line. If you have to bring in 5 dudes, you have 0 dudes available. You're still trying to figure out who's going to be the one that's going to step up and take over. And so far, nobody has assumed the spot of, yeah, I'm that dude that's going to run this. Even with the 5 stars behind them, it's going to take a little bit more time to me for Texas to really establish it. But that was the one spot that I was in shock of that Texas did not have going on. So if Oklahoma can figure it out with the interior, I think Jake Michael can do enough to open some holes. They can find holes like Florida did. They'll be up there at the Anthony Hill level very often, and that can make things a little tough for Texas going forward.
What do you make of that, Brad? Because Texas's defensive line has been a strength of the unit of Pete Kwiatkowski's defenses over the years. Maybe not necessarily as good this year. Colin Simmons was one of the preseason All-American selections. What's his performance been like? What's your analysis of this Texas defensive line?
Yeah, it's weird. It feels incomplete, right? Because they looked great against Ohio State. Like the Buckeyes couldn't run the ball against Texas. I know no one's putting a lot of stock into San Jose State, UTEP, and Sam Houston. I'm not saying you should. But for the first 4 games that Texas played, the D-line looked like a strength of their team. And it's like, dang, they lose 7 scholarship D linemen from last year, and they're still elite. That's incredible. And then the Florida game happens. And Jaden Ball is a very good runner, but Florida's offensive line, like y'all said, they had done nothing in terms of creating holes or rushing lanes for him to run through. And he had nothing but green grass pretty much every time he touched the football on Saturday. So I don't know. Like, I think they're better than what they were on Saturday in the swamp, but I guess it's still incomplete because they played 2 Power 4 teams. They looked really good on the D-line in one of those games. They looked really bad on the D-line in another one. So this may be the weekend where it's like, okay, are they actually good or are they actually bad? Saturday maybe when we find out the answer.
I tell you what, that Florida humidity will get to the best of us. Playing in Columbus in August, probably a little bit nicer than playing in Florida in even October. I mean, it's Florida's stupid. Yeah. It just should not exist. Anyway,
you got to deal with Florida man out there too. There's some weirdos in that state. So that's
it's a little bit crazy.
That's another thing.
Even though we're, into the second Saturday in October, it's going to be hot inside the Cotton Bowl on Saturday because it just always is. We can't get a break and get some fall weather. But Jay, where does Oklahoma's offense win? If they're going to have success against this Texas defense, where do you see it coming?
They have to establish run early. If they can establish the run and force Texas to have to conform defensively, have to actually respect the run game, then Oklahoma should have a good chance of not only controlling the clock, which to me is going to be the most important thing. You need to keep Texas defense on the field as long as possible. You're also going to want to make sure that you can open it up to the pass game. You want the play action to work. You want the short pass. You want the deep pass. You want all of that stuff to be options in this game. And the only way you can do that is you got to have some sort of a run game. So it's either Michael Hawkins on a design run where he quickly gets, he actually does a draw the pass in and then running instead of grabbing it and immediately rushing like he's a halfback dive, something like that. Or John Mateer decides to play. He's going to make that dive, that QB draw a massive part of his game because he's a dude that likes to run. He's very athletic. Luckily, knock on wood, it's only his hand. His legs are good, so he's still going to be up there running like crazy. But for Oklahoma, the key thing is going to be you got to establish the run, force Texas to pay attention to both phases, and then I think you'll be good.
And Brad, for Texas's defense to win against Oklahoma's offense, what do they got to do?
Yeah, I mean, do what you did last year. Like, I don't think Michael Hawkins Jr. scares any Texas fan. And I think he's gotten better from last season. But honestly, he didn't really do much against Kent State. That's like, oh, this guy is some sort of world beater now. Like, it's clearly a different offense with John Mateer on the field versus when he's not on the field. So, I mean, I think it's stopped the run, and it's also contained Michael Hawkins Jr. I think it's as simple as that, right? This is a battle in the trenches. Look, Texas has to get some pressure on Hawkins, right? That's also part of the containing him. Texas had 0 sacks last week. Florida entered the game tied for 100th in the country in sacks per game allowed, and what's supposed to be an elite Texas pass rush got goose-egged. So Texas has to, again, it all goes back to winning in the trenches. They've got to stop the run. They have to get some sort of pressure to take Michael Hawkins Jr. off his spot, make him a little bit uncomfortable. If that's the case, you can make some splash plays, maybe create some turnovers. And guys, the Longhorn offense needs all the help that it can get. And for Texas to win this game, they might need a defensive score. If they can't get that, they might need a couple of short fields created by the defense. So find a way to get an interception, get a fumble or two, and that's Texas's best chance to get this one done.
We'll get into some more keys to the game and predictions for OU Texas coming up here on a Locked On crossover edition.